Welcome to the ArcFlash podcast, sparking new ideas in the data center sector. I'm Kevin Aboden.
And I'm Jabez and we're here to provide a balanced, nuanced, and hopefully unbiased view on the state and most pressing topics affecting the data center and hyperscale cloud industry. We all want to see our industry succeed, but we're also not naive cheerleaders nor doomsayers. What we ultimately believe is the best way forward to see the industry experience sustainable growth is by addressing and being transparent with the challenges and sharing key themes and trends that are unfolding in the sector. I've been covering this space as an industry research analyst since 2011 and currently work at Structure Research on their data center practice. And Kevin, who do we have today on the pod?
Well, I'd like to introduce to everyone someone who's probably well known in the industry already, Shalini Lagrutta from DXN, and we had a great panel together at PTC, which led to a lot of conversations, and now a podcast appearance. So, Shalini, if you could tell everyone what you've been up to at DXN lately and all the exciting things happening.
Thank you, Kevin. Lovely to meet you, Jabez, as well on this podcast. Thank you for having me. It was really nice to see you, Kevin, at the PTC. What a wonderful event that was. So I'm the CEO at DXN. We're a modular data center company. We build modular data centers, cable landing stations, mining, on-prem, on-site mining products, and mining data centers for a lot of our mining customers in Australia and globally. We're based out of Australia. We've got a factory in Perth, a manufacturing factory in Perth. I'm based out of Sydney, where our corporate office is, and we've got also an engineering team out of Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. So it is a manufacturing. It is an export. It's a service provider company. We've also got two data centers that we own and operate. One in Darwin in Northern Territory, and a small data center in Tasmania as well, in Hobart. In a nutshell, that's who we are.
Yeah, and
So we're
Shalini,
talking edge of the edge of the edge, right? Like we're the absolute edge of everything.
Yes, that's right. So we see a lot of the grassroots requirements that come from remote places in the world. Whether it's the undersea, subsea industry, it's on-prem, on-site requirements, really specific, exciting stuff. Manufacturing companies that are looking for on-prem, on-site requirements. The world is now obviously evolving towards much more higher density applications in every industry. And so we're starting to see that as well. I've followed a lot of your podcasts around what's happening in the hyperscale world in a much smaller way. Very similar things that are happening on the edge as well. So that's where our industry is headed.
yeah, and the focus has been a lot on hyperscale and AI, and I feel like there's a lot more diversity in our industry than just hyperscale and AI. And so I think it would really be great to have our audience understand exactly what's happening in these sort of lesser known markets that you guys are serving. What sort of solutions are you providing to these markets from both a connectivity and a data center infrastructure standpoint? What is it like doing what DXN does?
Yeah. So, there is this saying that goes, the internet lives in the cloud. So it actually lives under the sea, as we know. So the cables are what connects the rest of the world. And what we're starting to see, especially in the last sort of 2 to 3 years, is there's been a lot of new cables being planned and executed. And what we're starting to see is this part of the world, so the Pacific, Asia Pacific. Now, a lot of planning has gone into this over the past decade, but it's been hugely accelerated by the hyperscale requirements and deployments, and the hyperscalers and the global internet companies themselves getting involved in the deployment of these cables themselves, this infrastructure themselves. We're starting to see huge amounts of work, investment, deployment, execution of projects in subsea. And so as these cables and these projects become real and live, you're starting to see demand and really wholesale sort of changes to some of the countries we deploy in some parts of the world. Now, on one hand, you've got that. Then you've also got the sort of Asia Pacific market that are also still underserved. So you've got to remember that the mobile penetration of Asia is still growing, and that data is critical to remember. That it's not just about connecting people who already have the internet or high speed internet. There is a huge segment of the population who today are still not on high speed internet, and that growth is still coming. So you imagine the amount of infrastructure that's needed, whether it's centralized, whether it's distributed, whether it's edge, whatever that architecture needs to look like. There is a whole lot of different companies, very exciting companies, a lot of private equity investment that's going in, planning around deployment. So what we see specifically, like where we are operating, the subsea industry is a big part of what we do. The mining infrastructure industry, we start at the very base level customer demand, and we deal direct with a lot of these customers, and they come to us and they tell us we need, say, anything from 500 kilowatts to 10 megawatts on a location, on an on-prem location, and it needs to be quick. It needs to be high quality. We've got no resources at site. We've got no data center infrastructure, cooling, mechanical, IT people to do anything in some of these remote locations, whether it's near cities or not. Resources, as you know, is difficult to find. And so what we end up solving, the problem DXN ends up solving, is building these large infrastructure projects in a modular form fashion in a factory, in an offsite location, and then bringing it to site. So an example of a project is one we did, a landing station in Palau, and this is a small island in the Pacific, not too far from the Philippines. Probably, I don't know. I don't think there's a direct flight from Australia at this stage. We still have to go via different places. But you imagine, sort of, we're building a landing station that is going to complete the build of a fiber infrastructure project, and we build the entire data center offsite in Perth. So everything from the power, the cooling, the batteries, the design, in parallel, the site works get done. So the plinth, the sort of site works and the engineering on the geotechnical and all that gets done on site. And at the same time, we plan the actual build while the subsea, the landing cable is coming through into the country. And so all that sort of merges together at one given time. Within 2 weeks, the landing station is up and running with services live. So that's the sort of thing that we do, and it's a big problem that people have that needs to get solved. And that is one aspect of it. In the mining sector, for instance, you can't do work on site. To actually get through to a mining site, there is a whole lot of regulation requirements, security requirements. So the more work you do off-site, the better. And that's really where our grassroots training comes from. We do everything in the factory. Every single tool that is required to be deployed on site is actually considered. And so the innovation that sort of goes into trying not to do anything on site is actually built in into the ecosystem as much as possible. Very similar type of design, so you can go from sort of 20 rack to 500 racks, and the densities are now going up from in the past it used to be 7-10 kilowatts. Now we're starting to see 30 kilowatts per rack. And that's a sort of demand that's coming through.
And this is not crypto mining, just to clarify for our audience. This is traditional
Yes.
raw material mining, right, that you're referring to.
Yeah, so automation is important for mining customers. So when mining gold mining. So one of the customers that I've been to, one of the customer sites I've been to is a site called Cadia in regional New South Wales, and it was the most amazing site visit I've ever had. The actual trucks, the tires of the trucks was bigger than the 4-wheel drive I was driving. as you're driving to the little data center that we built. It was actually a huge 20 rack multi-module data center, but it looked so tiny in the huge gold mine site that was there. So that's Newcrest mining in Cadia, and that's a massive gold mine site in New South Wales. Like that, we've got Anglo American, BHP. We've got a lot of different mining customers who need automation on site. So of course they use the cloud, and they use cloud services as and when that's required. But a lot of the workloads require on-prem, on-site requirements as well. And more, these mining customers, these mines, even if you look at manufacturing as well, manufacturing factories are starting to need a lot more on-prem, on-site workloads, and that's where we come in. So on the enterprise side, you've got that, and then you've got countries, entire countries that do not have the resources to build, high quality data centers that a global internet company is going to accept in terms of quality and standards and specs. So that's where the whole factory built solution comes in play.
Now, for the first time in a lot of these countries that you're working
Mhm.
in across the Pacific, I mean, this is the first time they've had this level of connectivity, right?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So some of the yeah. So I was involved in the very first landing station that went into Palau, and up until then they were operating on satellite. And I think Kevin, I might have told you the story that we in PTC, where we've got in the past, when we connect with customers, we don't do Teams, we do Skype or WhatsApp, or really low density sort of demand requirements, because you don't have the connectivity that you would normally expect, that you and I are all used to. So the sort of things that people are still operating under in terms of connectivity, that's all disappeared. So when we have the first cable that went in, I think it was in 2016, 17. So second cable landing station was just a few years ago, and that's the Echo cable, and that was a spur to Palau. So that's they have a lot of connectivity now, good connectivity now, but the first one was a big deal. It was a big launch. The entire country was involved. We had the president, with the opening ceremony, with the landing station being live. So imagine being connected by high-speed internet for the first time ever into a country. It's just great to be a part of that. Of course, we're a little part of that ecosystem, but it is great to be part of that. And you see that as you go, and as the years passed, and the people you work with, the ISPs that were there previously were operating on different business models. Now, all of a sudden, the new business models that they can operate under with high speed internet, being able to offer universities. So, for instance, you look at Fiji over the last 10 years, and the universities in Fiji, the University of South Pacific, and how they've adopted the internet to offer university courses to all of the Pacific, because they're all starting to get connected through proper high-speed internet. So enabling students to connect through the type of services we haven't even started. I mean, most of us are so used to that world. I mean, you've got an entire Pacific that's now coming together because of high-speed internet.
I mean, you're talking the kinds of things that could add like percentage points to GDP
Absolutely,
from, I
that's
mean,
right.
this is not small stuff, so that's pretty amazing.
And that's why a lot of the funding partners for a lot of these projects are, people who focus on that sort of outcomes. So of course, DFAT, the U.S. government, you've got a lot of different parties, funding parties that are heavily involved in building cables into this market, and they've got the amazing analysis on how GDP has changed in each of these countries over the years. It's all on their website. It's on the GSMA website as well, and how having high speed internet changes lives completely.
And Shalini, you're essentially bringing sort of the most advanced purpose-built modular data center into many of these more remote locations. And you mentioned that there's
Yeah.
local ISPs that already are present that you have to deal with. There's subsea cable operators that are building cables into these locations. What is it like, getting everyone to buy into this value proposition? Is it an easy sell, or did you have a lot of challenges sort of integrating all of those
Yeah.
things together?
Yeah, look, I think in the earlier years, so sort of 3, 4, 5 years ago, when we first started doing specific projects like this, it was very challenging because you've got so many parties that are involved. You've got the landing party, you've got the subsea, you've got the capacity, you've got the hyperscaler, the global internet company who's going to provide the capacity. Then you've got us, you've got the project management company who's integrating everything. Then you've got um, the guy who's actually going to do the geotechnical project on the ground, and then there's a whole coordination. And by the way, nobody has a proper connectivity, and we can't really talk on Teams. So we've had our share of challenges, and then okay, throw in COVID as well. So that was um, that was an exciting couple of years, definitely. So we've deployed quite a few projects through COVID, and I have to say, kudos to the team to drawings, detailed drawings, engineering drawings on Teams that's shared, and people approving engineering drawings, and we couldn't do site surveys. We've got to rely on specific people on the ground to give us information, and so yeah, we used FaceTime, used whatever services you've got on the ground to do site surveys and things like that. So those years were very, very challenging, but it's way better now. And look, I mean, part of that also forced us to automate everything. So try and do as much as we can in house. And yeah, some projects in the earlier years were painful. There were mistakes made, things missing, but we've got to just go and fix it. And but yeah, now the Palau project was an example of how everyone used the experience they had and that they learned over the years, and deployed it. So it's now great that the model is there from a deployment point of view. But what's even better is, I think, most countries now, most landing parties, countries are looking at any additional spurs that they want to build, realize that this is okay, it's not as hard as they thought it was going to be, and they don't have to do, it's not a project that they can actually, they have to find everything in the country within. So there is a consortium of international companies and funding partners that can come together and make this happen. So Timor Leste, for instance, is also getting their first international cable, and that's going to happen this year. Also, very much funded by governments as well, and that is a testament of different countries, different expertise coming together to get a project done within a short time frame. So yeah, from an experience point of view, believe me, we've got war stories.
Well,
Let
and
me.
you bring up a good point, right? Like, because everyone focuses on the main cable landing stations when the cable is first planned out. But
Mhm.
that doesn't mean you can't run spurs off to all kinds of other markets after the cable's already constructed. And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, maybe it's not a headline market, but there's no reason this can't be retrofitted afterwards.
No, and that's really where the capacity and the growth is going to come from over the years. So the business cases obviously have to be developed locally in each of these countries. So if there is a main cable that everyone sees from a headline point of view, the growth is going to come from all the spurs and all the countries that are actually going to looking at business cases today to connect to the main cables, and thinking through how they're going to actually develop business models within these countries for that to happen. There's a lot of those type of projects happening. Yeah,
Yeah. And do you
yeah. So I was
see,
just,
yeah, do you see,
yeah, go.
given how close you are with the subsea cable community, is your sense that more subsea cables are going to be built that are connecting unreached markets? Because they used to centralize a lot in some of the tier one hubs like Tokyo, Hong Kong,
Mhm.
Singapore. Sydney. Is there a real push to just decentralize a lot of this subsea cable connectivity so that there's not a lot of bottleneck and risk of
Yeah, look, I mean, from a bottleneck point of view, there's a lot of capacity that's being built now in the Pacific. It's going to be enough for quite a while. Obviously, what's going to change things is individual countries will have their own business model around, for instance, taxation, attract green energy. So there are some countries who've got plenty of hydro energy that's available, and so they're seeing what they can be doing to offer international businesses, storage companies, battery storage companies who are looking at battery storage in locations where green energy is available. They're actually trying to think through business cases now to deliver projects like that, which is exciting, which is so exciting, and that's going to change the GDP of these countries, right? And because they've got natural resources that has never gone anywhere, the capacity that they've got now are just reigniting business models that they never had an opportunity to do before. Some countries rely obviously on mostly tourism, but there are other countries who've got plenty of hydro energy that can be tapped for companies to come in and build large scale, hyperscale data centers as backup storage. And we know where the world is headed. And this is, we need clean and green energy. And some of these countries are able to offer that. And I think that's where the exciting thing is going to be. So I think, so to answer your question about distributed versus centralized, I think it is dependent on, the countries and what they can offer. And of course, the economics, the political will to do it. And there are certainly some countries who are way ahead of others, already thinking way ahead with that. We already see it. So we have requests for, okay, can you build a 20 megawatt data center in this country in a modular form fashion at high density for this. It's like, it's super exciting. It's great if it happens.
Nice. That's awesome.
And on that note of excitement, cables, and energy, especially green energy, thanks, Shalini, for coming on this week, and we'll see everyone very soon.
Thanks for
Have a
having me.
wonderful day.
Thank you.